reference has expired and move to question time. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. On the 21st of January, National Cabinet agreed to establish a new national database to record anti-Semitic crime and other anti-Semitic incidents. Minister, has the database been established, and if so, how many incidents of anti-Semitism has it recorded so far?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Patterson for the question, and I will obtain further information about the specific measure that you're talking about and the recording of any incidents. I don't have that to hand. Hopefully I will have... Senator, I don't have to hand a specific question about the recording of anti-Semitic incidents on a particular database. What I can say to you, Senator Patterson, is that the government, I hope the whole parliament, recognises the unprecedented rise in anti-Semitism we've seen in this country, recognises our collective responsibility to stand against it, recognises the importance of ensuring that police, national security agencies are able to do their work, that those who are responsible for this are apprehended, all are apprehended and face the full force of the law. That's the priority of this government. We are very focused on ensuring that we continue to support members of the Jewish community with the funding we have announced, with the legislation that has been passed, whether it's the hate crime legislation that is passed just prior to question time, or, for example, the anti-doxing legislation which was passed through this parliament previously, regrettably not supported by you, Senator. We want a framework in place that protects Jewish Australians. We want the authorities to apprehend those who are responsible, but most of all, we want all Australians to stand against the anti-Semitism and prejudice we have seen. It is not the Australian way.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, National Cabinet was 2 weeks ago. It only had one outcome that the Prime Minister has spoken about, which is the introduction of a new database to record incidents of anti-Semitism. Are you seriously saying you do not know whether or not it has been established? And if it has been established, how many incidents has it recorded?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. And Senator Patterson, I've been clear with you. I will seek to obtain that information. Obviously, I will seek to. Well, you didn't ask Senator Watt, did you? You said you didn't ask Senator Watt. I will seek to obtain that information, but I'd again say, Senator, I understand that those opposite, their primary focus here has been on how to gain a political advantage. I think we've all seen that. Well, our focus is on what we can do, first as a government, to stand with the Jewish community and against the sort of prejudice we have seen, the sort of hate that we have seen, because we know where it leads, and to ensure that we provide the appropriate legislative and financial support in the way that we have prioritised. That's been the focus of this government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, can you confirm that the National Cabinet was not briefed on the 21st of January about the incident at the involving the caravan at Dural, and that the only person sitting around the Cabinet table who knew about that incident was the Premier of New South Wales?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Here we go again, and you know what we see from those opposite. What we do see from those opposite, what we see from those opposite is this focus on press conferences, on politics, not actually. It says something about their priorities, doesn't it, President? It says something about their priorities. We are concerned with national security and keeping people safe. They're concerned with getting a grabber.
Please resume your seat, Senator Patterson.
President, a point of order on direct relevance. The Minister has not even pretended to try and answer the question about whether National Cabinet was briefed and who knew.
Senator Patterson, the minister is being relevant to your question, and I'll continue to listen carefully.
Senator Patterson, I'd refer you to my previous answers, and I would refer you again to the fact that this is an ongoing investigation. And I know, Senator Patterson, what you have been prioritising this week is performing for the cameras. The rest of us are prioritising ensuring—
Minister, order! 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 Senator Cash.
Thank you. And again, it is a point of order in relation to relevance. The question was very clear. It is asked for a specific date. It could not possibly be categorised as prejudicial to law enforcement or the investigation by merely giving a date.
Senator Cash, you, of course, can stand and ask for a point of order, and I will take that into consideration, but it is not appropriate then to get into some kind of debate and commentary. The minister is being relevant to the question. Minister Wong.
This is an ongoing investigation. I refer to my previous answers. But you know the most important, the investigation that we should engage in, an investigation as to your motives. Because we know, Senator Patterson, that what you and your leader have been interested in is playing politics with this and getting the grab up on television. We all understand that.
Senators, order. Senator Watt. Order. And Senator McKenzie. Senator McKenzie and McGrath, I called both of you to order on several occasions. And Senator McKenzie, you in particular, then just yelled more loudly. When I call you to order, I expect you to come to order. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. A key focus of the Albanese Labor government has been to ease the cost of living of all Australians. Our plan has been all about helping Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn. And low unemployment and keeping Australians in jobs is essential to achieving this goal. Inflation is down, wages are up, unemployment is low, and more than 1.1 million jobs have been created. How has the government achieved these economic objectives, and how has it helped Australians?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Stewart for the question, and particularly for focusing on cost of living, because when I'm out talking with people around Australia, they want the government focused on cost of living and looking at ways that we can support households when inflation has been higher than we would like. And we are pleased that inflation has come down, and has come down so substantially from what we inherited, where we had living standards going back, inflation going up, wages stagnating, and we've been able to make sure that inflation has come down substantially. Importantly, that wages are growing so that people are earning more and keeping more of what they earn, despite the objections of those opposite. And we have seen the creation of 1.1 million jobs. So unlike many other countries who've been dealing with the same global inflation problem, who've had to, as they've seen their inflation come down, seen a much higher rate of unemployment, we have been able to really see that more people have not only stayed in jobs, but actually seen the creation of more jobs. And that is something that all of us in this chamber should be pleased with. We recognise that households are doing it tough, which is why we have been looking at ways to provide cost of living assistance for households in a way that is responsible, in a way that the budget can afford, and in a way that doesn't add to inflation. And so we've done that through making sure that we've got wages moving again. We've done that through the tax cuts, making them fairer and apply for every taxpayer. We've done it through our investments in Medicare, our investments in early education and care, our commitment to reduce HECS debt. We've dealt with the indexation issue there, and now we're changing the HECS arrangement going forward.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Australia has fought inflation whilst keeping unemployment low. In creating 1.1 million jobs, we've also seen record participation of women in the workforce and the lowest gender pay gap. How has the Albanese Labor government supported women to earn more and keep more of what they earn?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Stewart for that supplementary and, again, for focusing on some of the improvements we've seen for women in the workforce since this government came to office. And I no doubt these are all things that those opposite would claim as wasteful spending, things like extending paid parental leave. I think that those opposite include that in their wasteful spending bucket. Paying super on PPL, making sure that we are investing in those highly industries where we see high levels of women workers, so in aged care, in early education and care. Again, obviously seen as wasteful spending by those opposite, and we shouldn't be surprised because they didn't focus on women's economic security when they were last in government, so why would they focus on it now? We've got the gender pay gap at record lows. We've got average weekly earnings for women have increased $173.80. Of the million jobs, 500,000 of them have gone for women, to women.
Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. The state of the economy at the last election showed inflation was high and rising, real wages were falling and living standards were going backwards. That is the record of those opposite. How has the Albanese Labor government's approach improved this outlook, and why has the government taken this approach?
Excellent question.
Minister Gallagher. Minister Gallagher, I've called you to answer the question.
I thought you were calling me to order. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Stewart. So, Senator Stewart is right. Inflation was going up, living standards were going backwards, wages had stagnated and workers hadn't seen a real wage increase for a long time. And let's contrast that with what's happening now. Low inflation, wages growing and more jobs. That's what we have delivered with our economic plan. Compare that with the Leader of the Opposition. $350 billion in secret cuts that he won't tell anyone about till after the election. How convenient is that? $600 billion for the nuclear fantasy and a $10 billion policy for long lunches, paid for by every working Australian. That is the contrast and that is the contest. I know those opposite don't like hearing about it. They're ashamed when it's put up like that. They don't like the fact that we've managed the economy in a much better and fairer way than they ever will.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Working households in Australia have seen their living costs increase by 19.4% under your Labor government. The cost of food has increased by 14.3%. The cost of housing has increased by 14.2%. The cost of insurance and financial services have increased by nearly 96%. Will Mr Albanese admit that he's done a terrible job of keeping costs under control for Australian families, and why does he continue to insult every electorate by attempting to convince Australians that they have never been better off?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Can I say first that the quote used is actually Mr Howard's quote, Liberal Prime Ministers, so we all remember that. Look, we are, as a government, absolutely focused on doing what we can to ease the cost of living pressures for Australians. And that puts us in a very different place to those opposite, who obviously have a range of other political agendas, but they don't include reducing the cost of living pressures for Australians. Now, when we came to government, inflation was high and rising and real wages were falling, living standards were declining and people were going backwards. That is what was occurring under then. Now, since we have come to government, inflation is down, wages are up and unemployment is down. We've seen inflation at almost a third of what it was at the election and falling. We've seen real wages growing again, living standards rising and the lowest average unemployment rate for any government in 50 years. We've seen the creation of more than 1.1 million jobs. Now, it is the case that Australians are doing it tough. But what they have is a government that wants Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn. The alternative, of course, is a party that wants taxpayers to pick up a $10 billion tab for the boss's lunch. I mean, instead of fee-free TAFE, they want free lunches. Fee-free TAFE? No, we don't want that, they say. We want free lunches. I mean, for $10 billion, you can employ 5.6 million people more in free TAFE. We could triple the HECS relief we delivered for 3 million Australians. It's 3 times more than the cost of the energy bill relief, which is saving households $300 a year and $325 for small businesses. Now, this gives you a sense of the priorities of Mr Dutton and those opposite.
Thank you. Senator Hume, your constant commentary is disrespectful. I have called you to order at least half a dozen times. You are disrespecting me. Come to order when you're asked to come to order and stop the running commentary. Senator Ruston, first supplementary.
The average Australian family with a typical mortgage has paid an extra $50,000 in interest repayments under the Albanese government after 12 interest rate rises. Will Mr Albanese apologise to these families for his failure to lower interest rates and for breaking his promise that they would be better off under Labor?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Wong.
Well, President, what we know is they'd be worse off under Mr Dutton. That's right. What we know is they'd be worse off under Mr Dutton. And there are so many ways in which we know that. We know that because the cost of living relief that has been put in place by this government, every single measure opposed by those opposite. We also know out of Mr Dutton's own mouth that he wants to cut. He wants to make sure he cuts. There's wasteful spending of over $350 billion in the federal budget. But you know what he won't do? Tell Australians what he's going to cut. He won't tell them. I mean, so he wants to go into election saying, "Yep, I'm going to cut at least $350 billion. Oh, by the way, I've got $600 billion to pay for my nuclear fantasy as well. I'm going to go do that, but you know, we're actually about you. We just won't tell you which of your Medicare services, which of your hospitals, which of your childcare services we're going to cut."
Thank you, Minister. Order. Senator Davey. Order. Senators, if I call another senator, just because I haven't called your name, it's not an open slather for you to then interject. You should also get the message that I'm calling for order. Senator Ruston, second supplementary.
Families are paying $1,000 more per year for their electricity under Mr Albanese, and his only solution seems to be run ridiculous anti-nuclear scare campaign involving three-eyed fish cartoons, forgetting that nearly all advanced economies in the world use or are pursuing nuclear energy. Why won't Mr Albanese take the increase of energy costs under his government seriously and admit he has broken a promise that Australians would be $275 better off under Labor?
Senator Ruston. Minister Wong.
Well, I look forward to you admitting, Senator Ruston, that your policy will cost around $600 billion. I look forward to you admitting it will take 20 years to even start delivering. I look forward to you admitting that even then it would only deliver 4%. 4% of the grid, and I look forward to you admitting that it will push power prices up by $1,200. Now, we look forward to the coalition coming clean on all of this and the rest of their secret cuts. But in the meantime, what this government will continue to do is do what we have been doing, which is to work to bring inflation down, to work to ensure that we provide assistance to help with cost of living and to ensure that wages keep rising. And in doing that, we will continue to be opposed, as we always have been, by the coalition who have always wanted lower wages for working people.
Thank you. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong. US President Donald Trump, standing alongside the Israeli Prime Minister and fugitive war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, has proposed the occupation of the Gaza Strip, permanently kicking out millions of indigenous Palestinians so the United States can develop it. On top of being outrageously disgusting and amounting to ethnic cleansing, such an action would be illegal under international law and a blatant violation of Palestinian people's right to self-determination. We know that the Liberals and Mr Dutton are lockstep with Trump. But, Minister, you have rightly condemned land grabs of other countries such as Russia. Will you today break your silence and condemn President Trump's threat and make clear that Australia will not support such actions?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Excuse me. Senator, through President, Senator, through the President, I think the Prime Minister has given multiple interviews since those reports have first been made, and he has made clear on several occasions that our position, the Australian position, remains supportive of a two-state solution. A Palestinian state alongside the State of Israel, achieved in accordance with international law. Now, we have seen overnight the discussions and clarifications. I think that this is a demonstration of why the Australian government doesn't immediately react to everything that is reported. I would say that the central players in these matters are the countries of the region, who will be in dialogue with the United States for some time on a range of proposals. I again say, as the Prime Minister has made clear, there is a bipartisan commitment in Australia to a two-state solution, a Palestinian state alongside the State of Israel, achieved in accordance with international law. And it is in this way that we can ensure the self-determination for Palestinians, security for Israel and peace for all the peoples of the region.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Sadly, no surprises in Minister Wong's response, still tying herself in knots to avoid actually answering the question, and not take the bare minimum of actions to condemn this shameful attempt by Trump to take control of Gaza and expel Palestinians. I will ask you again, Minister, will you make clear that Australia will not support these actions and also rule out the involvement of Australian troops in such actions if they happen?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Australia's position is clear. We support a two-state solution achieved in accordance with international law. And that, if you actually listened, Senator Faruqi, is actually a response to the things you have asked.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, you won't condemn Trump, but will you at least condemn Mr Dutton for praising the US President and calling him a big thinker on his despicable plans for Gaza?
Senator Faruqi, I am advised that it's hard to see how that is a supplementary, and it is out of order to ask a minister to comment on the opposition leader. But I invite Minister Wong to make any other contribution she so wishes.
I refer to my previous answers. I have responded to the issues you've raised.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Resources, Senator Farrell. I refer to the Albanese Labor government's plan to process critical minerals here in Australia instead of shipping them overseas to be refined. On top of delivering immediate cost of living relief, how is the government creating secure and well-paid jobs in Australia's resources industry that will strengthen our economy and deliver a future made in Australia?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Ghosh. He's a young new senator, but he's already impressing with the work he does on behalf of his Western Australian constituents, and he's doing that again with this very important question. The Albanese Labor government is tackling the challenges of today while ensuring prosperity into the future. Australians are still under pressure, but we've made progress in easing the cost of living for Australians. We've made sure every taxpayer got a tax cut, every household got energy bill relief, people have access to cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines and a stronger Medicare and fee-free TAFE. And that's how you deliver cost of living relief, not by focusing on tax breaks for bosses' long lunches. But the Albanese Labor government is also guaranteeing our prosperity into the future. The world needs the critical minerals that are abundant under our feet, particularly in Western Australia, the engine room of our economy. and Australia will happily give them to the world. The Albanese Labor government's production tax credits, as part of the most significant budget for the resources sector in a generation, will ensure that resources aren't just mined here in Australia, but processed locally to maximise their value. It's a no-risk approach to grow our critical minerals industry and ensure a future made in Australia. It will create more jobs in the resources sector, particularly in your home state of Western Australia, Senator Gosh, and to provide a secure and well-paid incomes for those families right across Australia. Most importantly, Senator Gosh, it will ensure Australian workers benefit on our way to building a future made in Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh, first supplementary.
That's great to hear, Minister, and it's great to hear how the Albanese Labor government is building Australia's future by processing critical minerals right here in Australia and moving us up the value chain. How will the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits create jobs in the resources sector, including in Western Australia? And who supports the production tax credits?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Ghosh for his first supplementary question, and it was an excellent one, might I say. Rather than shipping, yes, well, he's an impressive senator. Very fine. I know you would wish you should have senators like that on your side of the. Now, rather than shipping our critical minerals offshore to be processed, like the Liberals and the Nationals would like to do, the production tax credits will make it happen right here in Australia and right here in Western Australia. The industry has lined up to support the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits. The Association of Mining and Exploration Companies has said that this bill needs to pass Parliament. And they also say we need real action, and the production tax credit incentive is exactly what the industry has been asking for. The Minerals Council of Australia supports it as well.
Has expired. Senator Ghosh, second supplementary.
It is clear that there is a lot of support from Western Australians and the resources sector for the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits. Why are the production tax credits so important to the Western Australian economy, and what is standing in the way of them being implemented?
Senator Farrell. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Gosh, for your second supplementary question. And I know, Senator Smith, you're embarrassed about the position. You're embarrassed about the position that your party and Senator Cash should be embarrassed too, because unlike you, a real Western Australian senator is backing the resources industry, and the Albanese Labor government's production tax credits means more jobs and more investment in an industry that's tipped to boom as the world transitions to net zero. And yet the Liberals and Nationals are standing in the way, including you, Senator Smith, and you, Senator Cash. You've turned your backs on the resources sector. Not even Liberal senators in Western Australia are supporting it, despite how much mining contributes to that state. They've turned their back on Western Australia. They've turned their back on Western Australia. They're happy to squander the opportunity to create more jobs and grow our critical minerals industry.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Tyrrell.
Then my question is for the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment, Minister Watt. In the space of 2 months, we've seen Labor bring forward their own nature-positive bills, only to kill them by withdrawing them from the notice paper this week. There were plenty of industries who were loudly opposed to the bill, including forestry and mining. But salmon producers were also worried about what it would mean for them when they're already facing a lot of uncertainty. Salmon farms at Macquarie Harbour have been in limbo for almost the entire time Labor have been in government. When can workers in the West Coast community finally expect to receive some clarity from Labor?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Tyrrell. There's a couple of things that your question involves. First of all, the nature-positive laws. Of course, our government did seek to pass laws that actually delivered on the requests of many in the business community and those concerned about the environment. But the guy who's yelling at me at the moment was instrumental in stopping those laws being passed. because he likes to yell. He likes to yell. Just so to the rest of the Greens, they like to yell, but they don't actually like to get anything done. They're still yelling, yell, 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 never actually do anything.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senate, order, order, order. Senator Hanson-Young.
On a point of relevance, it seems as though Roger Cook is a member of the Labor Party, not the Australian Greens.
That is a debating point, and you know that. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thanks, President. Now, our view was that there was a sensible path to delivering the nature-positive laws to speed up approval times and provide strong environmental protections. But unfortunately, neither the Greens political party nor the coalition have chosen to take it. So it's obviously
Watt,
well
please
understood.
resume your seat. Order. Senator McKim. Order. Order. Minister Wong.
Senator McKim continued to yell very loudly after you called. I'd asked him to be brought to order.
He did do that, Minister Wong, very disappointingly. I am going to remind the chamber that this is Senator Tyrrell's question. She has a right to hear the answer in silence. Minister Watt.
So yes, Senator Tyrrell, it was clear, and we've seen it demonstrated again today, that neither the Greens political party nor the coalition was prepared to come to a sensible conclusion on the nature-positive laws, and for that reason we're not proceeding with them this term. On the second issue in your question regarding the workers at Macquarie Harbour, there is no one in this chamber or this parliament who has fought harder for the workers at Macquarie Harbour than Senator Urquhart, who was well onto this issue, supporting those workers well before the opportunists that we see opposite us or anyone else in this chamber. Senator Urquhart has had me down there when I held the Agriculture and Fisheries portfolio. She's had Senator Gallagher down there a couple of times. She's had the Prime Minister down there, Senator Farrell down there, and numerous others listening to the local community and working with them as Minister Plibersek makes her decision. We are strong supporters of the salmon industry. Of course, the laws need to be complied with, and I know that Minister Plibersek is taking this into account right now.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. On a visit to Tasmania on the 15th of Jan, the Prime Minister said he'll consider legislation so these kinds of reviews of past approvals can't be triggered against salmon farms. Is that a personal opinion of the Prime Minister, or is this a reform that the Labor Party is having?
Very good question.
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks.
Sorry, Minister Watt. Please resume your seat. Senator, I think that was you, Senator Whish-Wilson. You are out of order. My apologies if it wasn't. You are out of order. I had just called the minister. You are to listen in silence. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Tyrrell. I'm not directly familiar with the comments that the Prime Minister made, and I am conscious that we are going through a legal process at the moment. But what I know is that the Prime Minister has made very clear his support for the workers in the salmon industry. It's why our government has provided substantial funding in partnership with the industry to, for instance, do trials of oxygenation of Macquarie Harbour, given that oxygen levels is an issue there. It's why we've funded a captive breeding program, which I understand has been quite successful in preserving the Maugean skate, because, of course, the outcome I think that everyone wants to seek here, and certainly in the discussions I've had with the workers in the industry, is that people want to see a viable salmon industry go forward, but also want to make sure that we don't have an extinction of the Maugean state on our hands as well. There are some people who are only concerned with one of those issues. From the government's point of view, we think that we can do both, and that's what we'll keep working with the scientists and the local community on.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Well, Labor says they're friends to the salmon industry, but actions speak louder than words. Why has Labor delayed this decision and pursued bills like Nature Positive that would harm the salmon industry if you're such great friends?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Well, I have to respectfully disagree with you on one point there, Senator Tyrrell, and that is that the Nature Positive laws were not intended to harm the salmon industry. Quite the contrary. Where those laws came from was a report that was commissioned by the former government by Graham Samuel, the former head of the ACCC, which found that our existing environmental regulation under our existing laws hurt business by providing a lack of certainty and lengthy approval timeframes, and also hurt the environment. So that's what we were trying to cure, rather than to hurt any particular industry. As I say, Senator Urquhart in particular, but our government in general, have been strong supporters of the salmon industry. It's why we're investing in those oxygenation trials. It's why we're investing in the captive breeding program. It's why I know Senator Farrell and myself, when I held the portfolio, worked very hard on increasing our trade of salmon and other fisheries exports around the world, and that's the way we want to see things continue going forward.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Davey.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Food prices have increased by 12% under Labor and could rise even further as farmers and food processors face increased costs. According to ABARES, farm performance reports show dairy farmers' costs have increased 7.4%, and sheep and beef farmers' costs rose by 14.7%, and SPC are in the news today with the increases of processing. Why is Labor making it harder and more expensive for farmers to supply the fresh food Australian families need, and why won't Mr Albanese finally admit that Aussie farmers are not better off under Labor?
And thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Wong.
Well, we do support. We do support Australian farmers, and we do understand the difficult environment in which they operate. And you will recall, Senator, that one of the things that we have worked on since we came to government is to ensure access for our farmers to export markets, including China, because we understand how important that is, not only for the broader Australian economy, but for the financial position of farmers and wine growers and other parts of the agricultural sector. So I would say to you, we do understand the importance of this sector. We have worked very hard to ensure that there are more trade opportunities, and I think you would understand that enabling export opportunities is a very important part of ensuring the sustainability and viability of our agricultural sector. We are a trading nation. And the Senator also speaks about farmers supplying to the domestic market, and of course that's critical for the country. And one of the areas that is challenging for many is, of course, energy costs. And we're very conscious. Of what we inherited, the situation that occurred where we saw so much energy exiting the system as a consequence of policy paralysis by your government, and what we have had to do since we came to government. Now, what I'd say to you, Senator, you are genuine in your concern for the agricultural sector. I do not understand why you will be supporting a policy, a nuclear policy, which will guarantee higher prices for that sector.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Davey, first supplementary.
Farming on their farms.
Senator Davey, you started whatever it was you were saying before I'd even called you. Wait until you called. So please ask the first supplementary.
Senator Wong, through the Chair, farmers are directly impacted by Labor's cost of living crisis, including the higher electricity prices, which are up by 32%, higher insurance and finance costs, and the cost of Labor's truckie tax, increasing the cost of getting the produce to market. Why does Labor continue to pursue policies that squeeze out farmers?
Thank you, Senator Davey. Order. Minister Wong.
Well, I think, Senator, there's a lot of politics in your question, which is unsurprising. But I don't think it's. I said it was unsurprising. I did say I know that Senator McKenzie is. That there's one track there. But what I'd say to you, Senator, is your imputation as to our motives at night.
Senator McKenzie. Order. Order. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you. The imputations you make are incorrect. We do understand that our farmers, along with Australian households, have been struggling with cost of living and the cost, particularly energy costs. So, which is why we put in place, for example, the energy rebates, which regrettably you voted against, both for households and for small business. And we are also working to ensure that energy prices are more stable.
Thank you, Minister. The time
and
for
energy is more
answering has
reliable.
expired. Senator Davies, second supplementary.
The chair of the Australian Food and Agriculture Task Force, Mark van Dijk, has said 44% of farmers believed Australia was losing its competitive edge on the global stage. When will Mr Albanese apologise to our farmers for making it harder to feed and clothe Australians and for breaking his promise that they would be better off under Labor?
Thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Wong.
A strong and sustainable, agricultural sector requires, in part,
order. Senators Watt and McKenzie. Minister Wong, please continue.
A strong and sustainable agricultural sector requires, in part, access to external markets. You know that. You know that. If you look at the history of Australian agriculture...
Seriously. Order. Senator McKenzie, I've sat the minister down and you continue this debate across the chamber. If you can't sit in silence, leave the chamber, or I'll have to name you as per the standing orders. I should not have to keep repeating myself and calling your name. Minister Wong.
I can understand why Senator McKenzie is upset not getting this question, but it is not your question, it is your colleagues'. Senator, what I'd say to you is that a strong and sustainable agricultural sector in this country has...
Order! Order! Minister Wong, please continue.
I'll try for the fourth time. A strong and sustainable agricultural sector in this country requires not only our domestic market but access to global markets. If you look at the history of Australian agriculture, you and I both know that access to overseas markets has been critical. Has been critical in terms of the growth of our agricultural sector, has been critical in terms of the financial position of our farmers, and has been critical in terms of the economic opportunities in regional Australia.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change, Senator McAllister. Minister, what is the total cost of the net zero transition?
Senator McAllister is away up north, so it's to Minister Wong.
What is the cost?
Beg your pardon. What?
Minister, what is the total cost of the net zero transition?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Roberts. Yes, I'm representing Senator McAllister, who's representing Minister Bowen, while she's in Townsville for the floods. Given I am the representing minister, I'm just waiting to have those figures handed to me, but I know that we have had that transition costed, and it's in the order of $120 to $130 billion is my understanding. And importantly, the CSIRO, an organisation I know you haven't got an enormous amount of time for, but the most reputable science organisation in the country, the Australian Energy Market Operator, who probably knows more about the energy market than any other group within Australia, have both made clear that ensuring that we meet our future power needs by renewables backed up by gas and firmed by batteries is the cheapest way that we can meet our power needs going forward. I wasn't too far off the mark. AEMO's integrated system plan found that the net present value under a step change scenario towards a renewable-based system is $122 billion. Of course, that's significantly lower than the figure that it will cost for Mr Dutton's nuclear program. And as I say, people as reputable in this country as the CSIRO and the Australian Energy Market Operator have both found that it's not just environmental benefits that we get from meeting our power needs through renewables going forward, but it's actually the cheapest way we can do so as well. So that's the direct answer to your question, $122 billion.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Let me make the question easier. Minister, how much taxpayers' money is the government spending on the net zero transition across forward estimates?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Roberts. Well, I don't have a figure just for the forward estimates being the next 4 years, but as I say, the cost of delivering our power network into the future under the government's plan is $122 billion in net present value terms. Now, I know there is another plan out there. There's another plan. Is it really a plan, or, as Senator Canavan revealed, is it just a political fix? But whatever it is, it costs $600 billion, the nuclear plan from Mr Dutton, and we know what that means is that power prices will go up by about $1,200 a year per household per year. And what we know is that to fund those $600 billion that are required for the nuclear program, Mr Dutton will have to put in place very big cuts to things like Medicare, to energy support, to cost of living relief, to housing, to pensions, and all manner of other things to fund the most expensive form of power you can provide.
Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, Bloomberg has put the cost of Australia's net zero transition at $1.9 trillion. $1.9 trillion. One Nation uses a consensus figure of $1.5 trillion. Across forward estimates, the budget is in deficit. Wasteful, undisciplined government spending is feeding inflation, and you can't even tell me how much will be spent on net zero across the forward estimates. Minister, will you at least give an undertaking to table on the first day of the March sitting the figure for total cost of the net zero transition, including the forward estimates?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Watt.
Well, I've already provided the figure of $122 billion. I'm not across the Bloomberg estimate that you cite, Senator Roberts, and I'm certainly not across the One Nation consensus figure. I assume that's a consensus between you and Senator Hanson. You've had to sort of thrash that one out between the two of you and arrived at a consensus of $1.5 trillion.
Minister Watt. Senator Roberts.
Happy to answer Senator Watt's question.
Perhaps at some other time. Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Watt.
Maybe James Ashby was in there as well with the calculator going and working out a consensus figure. And I certainly don't know what assumptions underpin the One Nation, James Ashby, Senator Hanson, Senator Roberts consensus figure. But the fact is that the cheapest way that we can meet our power needs into the future, as cited by AEMO and the CSIRO, our most eminent scientific body, the cost is $122 billion. That is the cheapest way we can meet our power needs, which I think is a very good reason for any government, no matter what their political party, to pursue it.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Minister Wong. I note that Senator Faruqi asked questions earlier, but I would also like to acknowledge that there is an outbreak of Trump fever. The government is quarantining themselves while the opposition are mirroring Trump's anti-DEI policies, imitating Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Trump's latest announcement that he intends to take over the Gaza Strip and push the Palestinian people off their native lands is an unthinkable act of ethnic cleansing. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "We take considered positions when matters of international affairs are raised, and we do so in a manner that is consistent with Australia's values." End quote. Minister, when did Australian values allow for the murdering of children, the bombing of hospitals and the annihilation of a people?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Wong.
Senator Payman, I regret the way in which he put that last part of the question. I've made clear, the Prime Minister has made clear, our position remains as it was yesterday morning, which is we support a two-state solution, a Palestinian state alongside the State of Israel, achieved in accordance with international law. I would say to you that a bipartisan commitment to two states is the only way to ensure self-determination for Palestinians, security for Israel and peace for all the peoples of the region. And you would have heard me over many months assert Australia's position in relation to international law, including international humanitarian law.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
The Minister must admit how absurd Australia's position is, as the government claims to support a two-state solution but refuses to recognise Palestine. Now, with Trump planning to annex Gaza, how can this government claim to support Palestinian statehood while refusing recognition, especially when its ally seeks to erase it?
Thank you. Senator Payman. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator, I've articulated over many months Australia's position. Obviously, we are not the key player in the Middle East, and the future of the region is something ultimately which will need to be resolved by the countries of the region and the peoples of the region. In response to the various propositions which have been aired over the last 24 hours, I'd refer to my earlier answer to you and my answer to Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman, second supplementary.
Minister, we've heard those talking points before. Ultimately, as with all issues this government considers, it comes back to domestic politics. Leaving geopolitics aside, the Trump administration has shown it will impose tariffs on countries it believes have slighted the US. Will the minister admit their silence on Trump's recent actions stems from the bone-chilling fear that he will slap tariffs on Australian goods just months before an election?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Wong.
I might just respond a little bit more on the recognition point. I have laid out a few conditions as to recognition. That a future Palestinian state must not be in a position to threaten Israel's security. We see no role for Hamas in the future governance of Gaza or in the future Palestinian state, and no role for terrorists. We need a reformed Palestinian Authority.
Please resume your seat. Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. Minister, as the crossbench, we have very limited time, and obviously
Senator
I asked
Payman, what is your point?
A matter of relevance to my second supplementary question, please.
I believe the minister's being relevant. She has just started the answer, but I'll listen carefully. Senator Payman, you're not in a debate with me. I'm listening carefully, and if the minister isn't relevant, I will draw her to the point.
Thank you. I would have thought recognition conditions might be something you'd be interested in, Senator. Hamas must release all hostages and final status issues such as Jerusalem and the final territory of a Palestinian state should be defined through negotiations. Senator, we have taken a principled position throughout this conflict. People in this chamber may not well, Senator, we have taken a principled position. People in this chamber may not agree with the position we have taken, but it is a position of principle and it is consistent.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. And I refer the Minister to the most recent financial report of the Environmental Defender's Office, which outlines the $9 million in legal costs the organisation is required to pay following its failed attempt to halt the Santos Barossa project. Given it's reported that the repayment of the loan provided to the EDO from a mystery donor will be approximately $2.3 million each year, and that this happens to be the same amount that's been handed to the EDO by this government, does the minister think it an acceptable use of taxpayers' money to effectively pay for the penalty the EDO has itself incurred for their wrongful acts trying to destroy vital Australian projects and the jobs they create?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
All Commonwealth funding agreements contain provisions requiring the funding to be spent for the purpose for which it is allocated. All payments are subject to satisfactory progress on the project and compliance by the grantee with obligations under the agreement. As the matter is before the court, I'm not in a position to comment any further.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Astounding. Given the same financial report states that, and I quote, "A material uncertainty exists that may cast significant doubt on the EDO's ability to continue as a going concern," end quote, and considering that it continues to destroy jobs, will the government now do the right thing and cease giving taxpayer money to this destructive organisation which is in financial peril because of its own recklessness?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
I refer to my original answer.
Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
I'll give it a crack. Okay, President. Given the EDO is intent on destroying the jobs of hard-working Australians, why won't this government do the right thing and cease funding this discredited activist outfit?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Senator, a range of assertions you make in there. I would make the point that the Secretary of the Department has reviewed a range of allegations with regard to EDO's conduct, and I understand I'm advised that the results of that review are available on the Department's website.
Senator Sterle.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Watt. Cost of living pressures are front of mind for all Australians. When speaking with constituents in my home state of Western Australia, I often hear that energy affordability is one of their key concerns. The Independent Australian Energy Market Operator has said renewable energy is the lowest cost way to supply electricity to homes and businesses. How is the Albanese Labor government helping put downward pressure on energy bills? And how is the government's clean, cheap and reliable energy plan helping all Australians?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thank you, Senator Sterle, who I know, like every member within the government party room, supports cheaper energy for Australian households. And the Albanese government is relentlessly focused on supporting Australians to deal with cost of living pressures. Whether it's cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines, getting wages moving again, or energy bill relief, it is the thing that I know motivates every single member of our Labor government. And we know that that means making energy more affordable. After the Coalition's wasted decade in office, where we had, was it 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 energy policies? I've lost count. But after that decade, we're doing the heavy lifting now to ensure that we have cheap, clean, reliable energy into the future. And that means investing in the cheapest form of energy, renewables, to support our energy grid over the long term. And in the short term, it means important measures like direct energy bill relief that makes things a bit easier for all Australians. Support that we know that Mr Dutton and every member of the Coalition opposed. They voted against our energy bill relief and tried to deny that support to Australians. And now Mr Dutton and the Coalition want to make power prices go nuclear. They are hell-bent on spending $600 billion of taxpayers' money on nuclear reactors, signing every taxpayer up to higher power prices for decades. Now, we know that nuclear will take too long, cost too much and slug every Australian with $1,200 extra on their power bill every year. But the big question that remains unanswered is how will they pay for it? You don't just find $600 billion lying around the couch. The only possible answer is that Mr Dutton will have to cut savage cuts to essential services to pay for his slow, expensive nuclear reactors. Australians have a right to know what will be cut, and Mr Dutton has to tell them now.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Last year, the Independent Australian Energy Market Operator confirmed the Albanese Labor government's reliable renewables plan is the only plan that will deliver cheap, clean and reliable energy to Australian households. So, Minister, why is the government's reliable renewables plan the best way to reduce household power bills across Australia?
Minister Watt.
Well, thanks, Senator Sterle. And as you know, if you're serious about bringing down power bills, the best option to do so is renewables backed up by gas and batteries. That's what the Independent Energy Market Operator says. And we want energy to be cheaper, and that's why we're investing in renewables. And in contrast, Mr Dutton and the Coalition are telling Australians you can trust them to build nuclear reactors. The people who gave us 20-odd energy policies, you can trust them to get it right this time. All they need is a lazy $600 billion of taxpayers' money. And trust us, they say. This is the mob who blew out the cost of inland rail by 600%. But don't worry, you can trust them with $600 billion for nuclear reactors. The same crew who did Snowy 2.0 and blew out the cost there, who spent $600 million on commuter car parks in places that didn't even have a train station, now they want to build nuclear reactors. But they still can't be honest about what they will cut to pay for it. You'll be worse off under Mr Dutton.
Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. I note Mr Dutton's risky nuclear reactor policy will cost Australian taxpayers $600 billion, as you said. As Senator Canavan put it, and I quote, "Nuclear power is on the more expensive end of the scale," unquote. And now for the best part, Minister. What are the biggest barriers to delivering cheaper power bills to all Australians? As if I didn't know.
Order. Minister Watt.
Well, Senator Sterle, the biggest barrier to cheaper power in this country is Mr Dutton and the coalition, with the possible exception of one senator being Senator Canavan. Now, look, I think everyone knows Senator Canavan and I tend to disagree on most things, but at least he has the courage of his conviction when it comes to being upfront and honest about nuclear power. Because he said, and I quote, "Nuclear is not going to cut it. We're not serious. We're latching onto nuclear as a silver bullet because it fixes a political issue for us, and this is the kicker, but it ain't the cheapest form of power." Thank you for your honesty, Senator Canavan. I couldn't have summed up Mr Dutton better myself. We both clearly agree that Mr Dutton will say and do anything to get himself elected. But the reality is that Senator Canavan, Mr Dutton and every coalition member should also come clean about the cuts they plan to make to Medicare, to housing, to pensions, to education, to fund their nuclear reactors.
Minister Wong.
Thank you. President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.